And this is the TWIS Minion Science Island Hangout. And I'm Ed Dyer from the great state of Connecticut in the US of A. Joining us from Australia is Pamela Taylor. And both of us are having kind of an exciting time. We got a bunch of science stories to go over. Not going to get to anywhere near half of them probably. Just saw it in the New York Times. Russian spacecraft supply ship burned up in space. Got a story about a hallucinogenic as a medication. It's really pretty amazing how much it's helped in a clinical study, people with cancer. Life before oxygen, a Chernobyl shield, the largest man-made movable shield ever built, sliding over Chernobyl. Quick story about how stroke rates for people over 55 is going down. People under 55, it's going up. We got a tower in San Francisco that's shrinking. We have thermoelectric paint that hopefully can use the waste heat that may, for different devices. For instance, if your sun is coming in and it's hitting something like this, like the windows maybe or whatever, and it's heating up the surface and the heat is being given off, this paint can use that heat to produce electrical power. And we'll probably get to a few other things, but at some point we'll get to talk about Standing Rock, the protest that's happening in the US right now. And Pamela, however, you're having floods. You're going to be flooded out, Pamela.
Oh, no, I don't know. Well, there was just, it's just been a prediction I saw in the news and that. And I, because with climate change and everything, every year cyclones get worse and everything. I live right in a cyclone area, and I've had 2 Category 5 cyclones in the last 5 years. So, so then after, the huge cyclones that I've had, I then, of course, went and moved 1 street away from the beach because that's a sensible thing to do. And, and because I'm house sitting, I'm hardly ever home. So I was just talking to you beforehand, and I'm just basically waterproofing my belongings as much as possible so that if my house gets flooded, I don't lose too much,
Yeah.
I don't have to rush through it all. But yeah, I mean, maybe, I don't know whether they're saying, because it's okay. So the thing is, and you probably have it in hurricane zones over there as well. When you live in a cyclone zone, people can get complacent and don't take the warning seriously. So I don't know whether they're saying big floods, possibility, in order to spark the fear so that people don't get complacent and take it seriously. We're actually experiencing big floods, but we have life jackets and all that. I'm not worried. So it's all good. But yeah, that's why I mentioned it, because I'm waterproofing everything I can.
So you're putting your clothes in waterproof bags and your food in waterproof bags, and.
Oh well, no, I mean it's not flooded today. I'm not doing food. But
Are you putting the tape across your windows in an X pattern?
I haven't done that yet. No, I will. No, but what I showed you just then was I've got a vintage Monopoly game from about 1980. And I don't foresee me playing Monopoly with Chelsea anytime soon. So I was just putting that in. I've got a vacuum seal. Actually, I don't have to describe it to you. I can just show you. I've got a vacuum seal machine. Oh, where are we looking here? Can you see my ship? So, so you have and you got where's a roll? So I've got 6-meter rolls of things. So yeah, anyway. I'm putting things away that I'm not using right now that I do want to keep. That's what I'm doing.
It is a good idea. And when I was growing up, I think we had hurricanes fairly regularly. Maybe around August, September, October, maybe. Was that more of our hurricane season? And we would get maybe 2 or 3 a year, and then it slacked off. Where I live, we have what's called Long Island Sound. And so Long Island Sound protects us from the ocean quite a bit. So if a hurricane comes, more often than not, it goes over Long Island Sound, by it gets time it gets us, it's not too bad. We've had serious hurricanes, not in a while, but I think we take them fairly seriously. But you can look at Katrina in New Orleans. People in New Orleans used to get them all the time. Yeah, big deal. They used to have hurricane parties, big deal. And then they got one, and it was a little bit too much, and it was a very big deal. So, you know, you really got to be prepared, particularly, as you say, with the environment changing so much. I don't know.
Well, I've lived here in Cairns, in different suburbs all over Cairns, but in Cairns since 2001. And I've seen the weather change dramatically in what, 15 years. So that's my daughter. So I've lost my train of thought now. But yeah, anyway, so what I was saying was that so where I live, well, I'm housed at the moment, but there are flood measurement poles by the side of the road that come up to about here. So I'm 5 feet tall, which means that the water has been that high before. It hasn't been that high since I've been living there the last 3.5 years, but it has been that high, which means you can't cross it. You know, so then if you're at home, you're stuck at home, or if you're on the other side, you can't get home. So anyway, so that's what I'm doing. I'm just vacuum sealing up some things that I want to keep just in case. And yeah, it's a good.
And with climate change, beachfront property, beach, oceanfront property everywhere could be in trouble because the tides are coming up higher and higher. But now you got people developers, they're concerned with profits. So they'll put up a shiny new, beautiful condominium complex for the millionaires. They don't care if it gets destroyed or anything. And that's really not such a good idea right on the ocean front, because 10, 20 years, chances are you're going to get a lot of extensive flooding. So you see developments still happening mostly along the Atlantic coast and in Florida in particular, and along the Gulf Coast, waterfront, rising tides. Not a good idea.
I'm 1 street back from the beach, so if we have a big enough cyclone, I could be beachfront property because the street behind me might wash away. Thank you, Chelsea. But what was I going to say? Oh yeah, no, I can't look it up at the moment because I'm on my phone. But I'm pretty sure I recollect Sydney. No, it's just formula, honey. Here, Sydney is not allowing any more development right on the beach anymore. What's there is there, and they get the rates to maintain those properties are huge. You have to be a millionaire even to just maintain it, not just buy it, but just to stay there. And then I'm pretty sure they're not allowing any more. The council's not allowing any more development. So but you'd have to look that up. I can't look it up right
now. Yeah. Well, hopefully people will learn quickly enough so that they don't make that bad investment in property on the ocean front. Let me jump into the first story that I actually just saw in the New York Times, happened today, about this Russian spacecraft. And I will screen share. Screen share it. Can you see it? Okay. There you go. That was the ship that was. It's a Russian spacecraft. 2.6 tons of food, fuel, and supplies to the International Space Station. Failed to reach orbit on Thursday, that's today, and it burned up in the atmosphere. So you have this organization, Roscosmos, Russian Space Agency, a Soyuz rocket carrying the Progress 65 cargo ship successfully launched. And then after 6 minutes and 22 seconds into the flight, everything looked very, very good. But after the upper stage, separated from the core booster, flight telemetry stopped, leaving ground controllers confused about what happened. Son of a gun, I can see them scratching their heads. What's going on here? And then they learn later. Now they say they learned later. I don't know. I'm thinking of, this has happened with NASA and with some of the civilian space flights. And when they know pretty quick. I mean, they're tracking everything. And if something goes wrong, if they lose communications, they know almost immediately what's happened. In this particular case, with the Russian space program, it says they later confirmed. I don't know, maybe the communication setup's not so good. A failure occurred 120 miles from a place called Tuvo in Siberia. The astronauts got plenty of supplies, a whole bunch. The cargo included 1,400 pounds of propellant, 120 pounds of oxygen, kind of important, I guess, bunches of food and spare parts, etc. There's a Japanese cargo ship slated to go up on December 9th. Now, the more troubling thing to me is that this is the 4th loss of a spacecraft carrying cargo to the space station in the last 25 months. Now, before that, we had a 16-year gap. The space station program experienced only one loss in a cargo ship on August 11th. So you had a 16-year gap with only losing one cargo ship. And now, in the last 2 years, we've had 4 lost. So somebody better look into that. I don't know if it's a consequence of using older rockets, not having the newest rockets yet, and I don't think we have them yet. So maybe that's it. I don't know, but that's 4 failures in 25 months is not a good record, and it shows we don't have this space flight business down quite just yet.
No, that's very expensive too. I mean, you're never going to be able to afford better rockets if you keep, failing the old ones. So, how are they getting food and stuff?
They have regular flights. They get regular flights. I don't know how often, but they've apparently got plenty of food on board. I'm sure they do that as a backup anyway. I'm sure they keep enough food and propellants and oxygen, probably for even if I would guess actually they would say, if we have an emergency, how long will it take us to get up there and bring them back? Whatever that answer is, you got to have at least enough supplies for that. And I will guess probably the next one on December 9th could also blow up, and they still will probably be okay.
Just reminded me of the movie that have you, man.
Yes?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, can you hear me? Oh, I said, did you hear what I said? I said, it reminds me of the movie The Martian with Matt Damon.
Yes, that's one of the best movies. A great book too. I think actually the book is better than the movie if you haven't read it.
No, I have a big pile of books to read actually, so I'll try and put that one on the pile.
Oh, and in the book, the character, and I forget his name, was even a lot snarkier and sarcastic than Matt Damon was. So it was actually even a more entertaining read. But you know what can be entertaining? Hallucinogenics can be entertaining. The magic mushroom. And this is pretty amazing. This is actually let me screen share. Let me do the screen share thing. You don't have to look at my bald head. There we go. Now, it's pretty amazing. This is a hallucinogenic psilocybin. And when combined with psychological counseling, a single dose, just one dose of a mind-altering compound contained in psychedelic mushrooms significantly lessens mental anguish in distressed cancer patients for months at a time. And this is from the New York University Langone Medical Center. Study showed that one-time treatment with the hallucinogenic drug psilocybin, whose use require federal waivers because it's a banned substance, quickly brought relief from distress that then lasted more than 6 months in 80% of the 29 subjects monitored. These are all cancer, people suffering from cancer. Side effects, very few side effects. Study results were endorsed in 11 accompanying editorials from leading experts in psychiatry, addiction, and palliative care. So other experts had looked at this. It's peer-reviewed and it's solid science. Our results represents the strongest evidence to date of a clinical benefit from psilocybin therapy with the potential to transform care for patients with cancer-related psychological distress. Larger clinical trials proved successful. We could ultimately have available a safe, effective, and inexpensive medication. The key is dispensed under strict control. This is in this particular case, is a real control study to alleviate distress that could increase suicide rates among cancer medicines. And I would say eventually might even be something that could be prescribed for people suffering from all kinds of mental conditions. One capsule is good for 6 months. For the study, half of the participants were randomly assigned to receive 0.3 milligrams per kilogram of this hallucinogenic. Then the rest received a placebo, known to produce a rush that mimics the hallucinogenic drug. Halfway through the study, the participants switched treatments. Those that had been receiving the hallucinogenic took a single dose of the placebo and vice versa. Neither patients nor researchers knew who had received either the control or the actual hallucinogenic drug. So it was a good control study. One of the key findings was that improvements in clinical evaluation scores for anxiety and depression lasted for the remainder of the study's extended monitoring period, specifically up to 8 months for those who did take that placebo, that hallucinogenic drug first. All of the patients they were women aged 22 to 75, had either advanced breast, gastrointestinal, or blood cancers, and had been diagnosed as suffering from serious psychological duress related to their disease. They were all volunteers, of course. They had tailored counseling from psychiatrists, sociologists, nurses, and social workers, and they were monitored very closely for side effects. Patients also reported post-hallucinogenic improvements in their quality of life, going out more, greater energy, getting along better with family members, and doing well. Our study showed that this hallucinogenic facilitated experiences that drove reductions in psychological distress. And of course, we're talking about a very controlled study. We're talking about the participants being closely monitored, but that shows the promise. One dose good for 6 months. That's amazing.
Absolutely, I'm surprised at that. So they're not particularly tripping, are they? They're just feeling good.
Yes, they didn't mention the specific effect that happened when they first took the drug. They don't mention that. But, and again, it was a control amount that they took. So it may not have been enough. It provided a rush. They felt immediate benefits, but the study doesn't mention anything about, having a trip or anything like that.
I have no experience with only drugs I've ever had really experience with are caffeine. Okay. So, but I used to date a guy from Ecuador, or the magic mushroom. Perhaps they do different, everywhere, and no one thinks anything of it. If you want it, you can take it. The laws are very different. You just pick them off the tree and I don't know, eat them or cook them, whatever they do with them. Anyway, but he told me one time when he was at university, hours, like he had to, yeah. Anyway, he had to write down his observations of cows because he was doing like an environmental management kind of thing. And he said he ate some mushrooms, whatever he did with the mushrooms. He had some mushrooms beforehand, really tripping, and he went out and rather than observe the cows for weeks because he was feeling lazy. What he told me.
Connection's starting not to work so well. That's okay.
The cows some questions. Right?
I don't know, Pamela. You sound like you're tripping there. I think you've got a trippy internet connection. Yeah, we knew this could happen because of the plan you're on. But okay, normal, okay. Pamela, looks like you're back.
Oh, really?
Yes.
What I said though, that yeah. So anyway, they're supposed to trip on the mushrooms. So maybe they're taking that quality out of it. Otherwise, a lot of people are going to actually want cancer just for the trip.
I know, well, Justin's talk about taking LSD. But I mean, they talked about some of the first experimentations with it, perhaps leading to suicide and people having flashbacks is what I read about. But those weren't under controlled conditions. Those weren't a prescription drug. That's going on the street and buying something from somebody. Now, I actually was at Woodstock, and they had anything under the sun you can imagine. They were selling brown pills, and I ain't taking none of that stuff because you have no idea what's in it. But if you're talking about a prescription amount of the medication, and I think if it's the right amount, they can probably eliminate, I'm sure they can eliminate the really bad side effects. And almost everybody takes some kind of a drug that could have bad side effects, such as caffeine. I mean, most of my friends, I mean, they're on caffeine. They're caffeine junkies for Pete's. Starbucks. People go into Starbucks. So, a lot of it is it's just your drug of choice. The important thing is you test the drug, you find out what's a safe amount, and I would prefer to have any drug except maybe methanol, the speed. No, is it methadone? I can't think of the name. Maybe it's methadone. The crack addicts, or Hypnol, the jailbreak drugs. Outside of that, I think anybody should be able to get whatever drugs they want, and they can just go to a pharmacy get heroin or anything they want. Because at least now you're talking about they're going to be receiving a safe dose. You go out. Go ahead. Pamela, you can talk if you can control your feed. Yeah, that's fine. There you go. Go ahead. You're back now. You're back on mute. You're off mute. You're back on mute. You're off mute. We're tripping out here. Okay. I'm going to move out to another quick story. And this is how.
I wasn't saying some food to Chelsea.
All right. Lovely picture there we have of you, Pamela. Frozen Pamela. Okay. Pamela will pop back in at any moment, I am sure. And don't be afraid to interrupt me whenever you can get in, Pamela.
I'm here.
Yeah, you're freezing and you're not hearing you too much.
I know.
You don't have to mute yourself because you have a problem when you're trying to go back open. So I got a short story here. And the interesting thing is it deals with strokes and how strokes are going down for people over 55. The percentage of people getting strokes over the age of 55 is going down. For people under the age of 55, in particular the youngest group, it's dramatically going up. You have, for people aged 35 to 40 to 39, 147% increase in strokes. That's mind-boggling. A 100% increase in strokes, doubling in strokes for people 40 to 45, 68% for those 45 to 49, and then 23% in the age group 50 to 54. And that starts going down, 11% down, 55 to 59, 22% down, 60 to 64, and 18% down from people 65 to 69. And that's a head scratcher. I can see going down because I guess, if you're getting regular medical care, maybe you're going to see people are going to notice the symptoms of stroke. So you're less likely to have it, brought on. Maybe there's stuff you can take to prevent it. But younger people, this dramatic increases. The younger you are, the greater the risk of having a stroke. The researcher thinks that it's increasing obesity and diabetes in younger people. And I think it comes down to, again, almost two populations. People who take care of themselves, people not taking care of themselves. And you look at a lot of people, and when you get older, I think you're more likely to go to a doctor. In the United States, in particular, and this was an American study, where you don't have to pay for any, if you're covered by Medicare and health insurance, there's no longer a cost factor. Maybe when you're younger, a lot of people don't want to spend the money and the time to have that exam. I don't know, but it's really amazing to me to see, a 150% increase just about in people 35 to 39. That's wow. And again, I think it's probably those people, if you take care of yourself, you're good to go. And if you're not, you're asking for trouble.
I'm in that age bracket. I'm 36. But it's a stress factor. You can yourself, but then if you're hit with a very stressful situation, then you're not emotionally equipped to handle it, then you
Yeah, you're freezing up, Pamela. I can't hear you too well. In and out.
know. Hour. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. But anyway, in and out, in and out. No, I was gonna say, you know, you gotta, I have another guy who almost had a stroke last week. He was
Yeah, you're really breaking up.
people not taking care of as well as their physical. It's not, they're not taking.
Okay. I'm going to go on to the next story. You're kind of breaking up. And as I say, you know, anytime you want to talk, don't mute your microphone, because what I saw was I saw the mute button going off and on, off and on, off and on. So don't bother muting your microphone, Pamela. That might work better. Just leave it off. Hey, you look great.
Very loud in the background.
You muted the mic again. I would suggest you don't, unless there's something in the controls that keeps muting you for some reason.
Ed, no, I'm muting it. Can you hear me? I've got Chelsea screaming in the background. Got the TV going and the iPad going. I have to mute.
Don't worry about it. I'd rather have you. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next story. You can pop in when you want to. Maybe you can pop it, and if you can't, well, we'll just play charades or something. I don't know. All right. I had a story here about. Let me find it. Let me find it. Well, yeah, the heck with it. We'll talk about San Francisco, where our friend Blair Bazdrich lives from TWIS, where the TWIS Kiki, Dr. Kirsten from This Week in Science used to live. And we all know that in San Francisco, they have these little things called earthquakes from time to time. The fact that, you know, buildings are shaking, not, you know, even a little bit, they're built to withstand a certain amount of earthquake damage. But now satellite images are showing that the San Francisco Tower, it is shrinking. It's sinking, excuse me. It's sinking. It's not just moving back. It's actually sinking. I mean, only a couple of centimeters a year. But yikes. And I'm going to screen share again. Okay. There you go. You're looking at the Millennium Tower, a skyscraper in the center of San Francisco, and it's sinking a few centimeters a year. And studying the city is helping scientists to improve the monitoring of urban ground movements, and in Europe as well. Completed in 2009, it's a 58-story Millennium Tower showing signs of sinking and tilting. Cause hasn't been pinpointed. It is believed that the movements are connected to the supporting piles not firmly resting on bedrock. Excuse me, let me repeat that. Connecting piles not firmly resting on bedrock. How in the world Could they have, I don't know. I mean, when you're building a tower like that, that's one thing you got to start with, making sure it's on a firm footing. And another interesting thing is that these observations are coming from the Copernicus Satellite 1. Actually, there's 2 satellites, twin satellites. And they're able to detect subtle surface changes down to millimeters. Technique works well with buildings because they better reflect the radar beam. Now you got the people from the European Space Agency, something called NORAD, PPO Labs, Geological Survey of Norway, working with these satellites. And they found, along with earthquake-prone, along the buildings along the earthquake-prone Hayward Fault, and as well as the ground underneath newly reclaimed land in San Rafael Bay. Now, the interesting thing there is that, let me get rid of that screen share, more hallucinatory effects. Okay. The important thing there is the ability to monitor these structures. They're moving, whatever it might be. And a couple of weeks ago, I read a study from Norway. And what they do in Norway is they actually embed monitors in bridges when the bridges are being built. So they have devices and they can now monitor 24/7 anything happening to that bridge. And that's what I think they should do in all buildings, bridges, all kinds of constructions. Embed a sensor in it so you can monitor what's happening to that structure 24/7. You're losing your connection. So let's see, Pamela, let's see if I can hear you, because your microphone is muted now. Because I might as well jump to the Standing Rock story, talking about it, since you don't know how well your connection's going to be at any moment. Can you hear me, Pamela? Okay, I guess Pamela's, I'm going to hold that off until Pamela's connection either gets more reliable, Justin Jackson shows up, or, my old brain's going. We'll cover it. Science Island on drugs. Okay. I'll hold off on that story about Standing Rock. We'll get to it a little bit later. I'll cover some more science. This is kind of a genius story. It's about thermoelectric paint. And it's a paint that can absorb waste heat. You heat up something, gets heat up during the day, it gives off heat. Well, you put this paint, this new material, and that can absorb that waste heat and create electricity. And let my screen share with you guys. Come on. Ah, there you go. It's thermoelectric paint. And the researchers, they developed this photovoltaic paint, which can be used to make paint on solar cells. Now, in this new study, they've created what they called thermoelectric paint. Captures the waste heat from hot painted surfaces and converts it into electrical energy. I expected that the thermoelectric painting technique can be applied to waste heat recovery from large scale heat source surfaces such as buildings, cars, and ship vessels. Ye Sung Sun, and he's from the Uppsala National Institute of Science and Technology. For example, the temperature of a building's roof and walls increases to more than 50 degrees centigrade in the summer, Celsius in the summer. If we applied thermoelectric paint on the walls, we can convert huge amounts of waste heat into electrical energy. The thermoelectric paint, there's a little picture of it, looks like, let's see, thermoelectric paint looks very different from conventional thermoelectric materials, which are typically fabricated as flat, rigid chips. These devices are then attached to irregular-shaped objects that emit waste heat, such as engines, power plants, and refrigerators. However, the incomplete contact between those curved surfaces and the flat thermoelectric generators results in heat loss. So it's not an efficient system. They address this issue of incomplete contact by demonstrating that this paint, this thermoelectric paint, easily adheres to the surface of virtually any shape. It contains thermoelectric particles. I can't pronounce it, so I'll, anyway, but it's bismuth telluride, which are commonly used in conventional thermoelectric devices. The researchers also added molecular sintering aids, which upon heating cause the thermoelectric particles to coalesce, increasing the density of these particles in the paint along with their energy conversion efficiency. And they demonstrated that the thermoelectric paint can be painted onto a variety of curved heat-emitting surfaces, and then after sintering for 10 minutes at 450 degrees Celsius, the painted layers form a uniform film about 50 micrometers thick. Tests showed that the devices painted with this thermoelectric paint exhibited a high output power density. This is 4 M watts, 2 centimeter 2. I don't know what that means. For in-plane type devices, and 26.3, I guess this is millimeters, W would be watts, for through-plane type devices. And I don't really know what those numbers mean. These values are competitive with conventional thermoelectric materials and better than all the thermoelectric devices based on so far. All right.
Very cool.
I hear Justin. Can I see Justin? Let me see. Justin is here. I know he's here. We were talking about hallucinogenic drugs at the beginning. Pamela's gone. Her connection, I guess, wasn't very good. I don't know. I seem to recall you saying you might have had some experiences with hallucinogenic drugs. Yeah. In this earlier story, one dose in a clinical study with women suffering from cancer, one dose alleviated all their symptoms for up to 6 months.
Yeah, and there's also been studies that shown that empathy and compassion and sense of well-being can last a lifetime from using the magic mushroom in clinical tests. It was something that they used to do therapeutically and have sort of restarted on some research level, I guess. There's been a few of those stories over the last 4 years or so.
Yeah, and the key is getting the dose right. first of all, getting the right dose. And in this case, it was a very controlled study. And what I said earlier was all drugs, caffeine, have side effects. And if you can go any kind of drug, all drugs should be available except the drugs that cause the highest violence. You should be able to walk into a pharmacy and get heroin if you want it. That way, it's safe. And you're going to eliminate going out in the street and buying it. And then, you have drug cartels exist because Americans won't stop taking drugs. Okay, your turn.
Yeah, I agree with the cartel thing. But of course, part of why the cartels are successful isn't just because it's illegal. I think that's a major misnomer. I think the cartels are successful because some of these drugs are so addictive that even while your life is falling apart, you will continue to pursue them. And I think that's something that, who do you put that in the hands of legally? Do you put it in the hands of RJ Reynolds? Do you put it in the hands of, a for-profit clinic? Do you put that you can't put it in the hands of doctors. You can't have doctors going, well, part of your duties is going to be to continue to prescribe something that's very addictive that will destroy somebody's life. Oh, wait, pain pills. Right. But that's, and they're starting to investigate now, like, how come some doctors seem to write a lot of these scripts, whereas others in the region do not? Well, it's the fact that the cartels, the drug dealer, sort of.
That's the biggest point for me.
Drug dealers is that they're willing to offer a service that is wanted but is highly destructive. So now, if we're talking about something like your run-of-the-mill hallucinogenics, I think the laws are too severe on them. Although, again, it would be nice if there was primers and education on how to do drugs, and there are. You can read some books or something, but yeah, I don't think I subscribe to the being able to go and buy heroin at your local pharmacy kind of a thing either. I think it's been proven now pretty well that especially opiates are addictive and destructive. I think there's probably a place for legalization.
So is alcohol.
On some level.
So is alcohol.
But it's not going to be the same thing. There's a percentage of people who will become alcoholics, and off they go down that path. But I think everyone who tries heroin a few times is going to find it. They're an alcoholic for it. Right? You know what I mean? Like, it's like 100% alcoholism towards certain drugs, like things like cocaine. Like, there's very few real casual, weekend blow six pack, or what would you call it? Like, it's not a thing that can be, do a couple lines with dinner, and then you had to hang out at some friend's house, so you shot heroin. These drugs have different effects on people, and I think that's part of why marijuana is finally being legalized throughout a lot of states. Is that it is one of those drugs that you can do like alcohol and maintain a job and a family and a career and everything else that goes with being in the world. I mean, there's not a lot of marijuana or alcohol junkies, right? I think that could be the word that you would use. If there's a word junkie associated with somebody who's doing a type of drug, probably that means it should not have, pharmacy accessibility. But I do think that it should be treated like a health problem. I do think that should be ways that people could seek treatment for this sort of thing. Unlikely to, happen on a federal level, but certainly there's state programs that exist that are
education. The way you can't stop people from taking drugs. The only thing that happens is if somebody somewhere is going to say, here's that drug. Maybe they're on the street corner. Maybe that's doctor writing out a whole bunch of prescriptions. You can get drugs. Can't stop people from taking drugs. You prioritize the drugs that cause the most violent behavior. You ban that. Not you focus on that. You focus law enforcement on that. The one or two, maybe like Rohypnol, the date rape drug, something like that. And you take all of law enforcement energy and you focus it on the drugs that cause, the one or two drugs that cause the most violent behavior. Then you educate people, you reduce poverty, and you do things like that because you just can't stop people from taking drugs.
So you want to ban alcohol?
I would, yes.
Oh my gosh.
It doesn't work. I understand it doesn't work, so I'm not going to suggest we do it, but I would like to see us do it.
Wow. Yeah. Really, but I guess it's also like the most commonly used. So is it the most one that's makes people prone to violence? Yes, but it's also
up there.
The access is so common and frequent. It's also, I think one of the things, and I think you touched on there, is education. I think education, like if you're really educated and a junkie, like not educated about necessarily just about drugs, but if you're just really educated and you're a heroin junkie, there's a good chance you might make a fantastic writer. You're a terrific musician. You might be a very creative person. And that can be a perspective through which you create, right? Or write, or study, or whatever it is on the subject. But education, period. I think if we lived in a university town where everybody had at least undergraduate work done, and everybody got into drugs, just the same across like a regular society, you probably wouldn't see all the ill effects that we have in our society. And I think a lot of dependence and chronic alcoholism or drug use also comes from a place of poverty, a place where there isn't a way to like, been going at it pretty rough. Let's go. I'm gonna go retreat to the family cabin for a few weeks, kind of clear my head, get off these drugs, really kick it. There's things you can do with a certain level of affluence, and there's things you can do with a certain level of education where you can know what steps to take or find your way out. But maybe you can't if you're extremely poor and uneducated and hooked on drugs. Like there's a whole bunch.
And I would also say, and it's not necessarily right, but you set up clinics. People can walk in and buy drugs. They know they're getting a safe, but the drug they're getting is not laced with something. It's not going to kill them. It's at least safe. You have profits. You take those profits and you pour them into poverty and education, two things that can reduce drug dependency. And the other thing is, look at people who may be predisposed genetically to alcoholism. And I have two uncles who are alcoholics. My grandfather committed suicide. So I could have a genetic predisposition towards alcohol, which is more important. I know that. Don't drink alcohol. Don't, because I know I could be addicted to it. Now you go to caffeine and you go to something else, but, so I don't know. Science will find the answer, help find an answer. I don't know how long you're going to be here tonight, Justin, and I know I want to talk about huh?
What have you heard?
Oh, I wanted to talk about
Standing Rock. I haven't talked to him in a while. Hopefully I'll be here.
Okay.
Good long time.
I want to give you a chance. We've had 45 minutes of pure science here. And so now we're going to get into a little bit of politics, but we're talking about that Standing Rock protest that's going on up in North Dakota. Now, the article that I've got that I didn't realize on some background of it. And let me screen share this so you don't have to look at my old bald head. And I put a link to it in the chat room. And it's when they were first oh, come on, stupid survey. I got a survey. I've got a survey. I don't want your stupid.
It was first routed to go near the town of Bismarck, which is north of the Sioux lands. And it was determined it was going to go too close. Well, some of the people complained, and then the Army Corps of Engineers apparently took a second look at it and goes, gosh, you know what? This is going to go too close to drinking water. This is going to be too dangerous for the city and its bustling city of Bismarck, North Dakota, and its 30,000 residents. So they decided they'd find an alternate route. Now, the beginning of this route is sort of interesting. I don't know if you've got the map there. The beginning of the route goes basically does a half circle around right along the border of another reservation further north in North Dakota, but then comes down. So they said Bismarck. Oh gosh, this is too dangerous to put it near the city. So then they rerouted it to go right along next to the Sioux reservation and go under the freshwater source of their drinking water. Now, what's also interesting about the water that it's going under is it's a sort of man-made water structure. This was created by a dam by the Army Corps of Engineers. The Army Corps of Engineers actually created a lot of dams in this area. And mostly when they create a dam, it would flood what was the most fertile growing lands of the Sioux. On Sioux lands, and so they get pushed off this land, pushed off that land, and you know you're gonna hear people saying, well, and I'm sort of saying it now too because this is one way of describing it, is that it's going up against the Sioux Nation land, and really it's going through it. I mean, and it's not in that we're all living on Native American soil. There's the reservation, which is the reservation now, which the government recognizes as the reservation. And there's a whole lot of land around the reservation that, you know, when these treaties were being created in the 1860s something, 1890 again, it wasn't like it was a bargaining table. And Native Americans were like, okay, we'll let you have all of this if you can guarantee us that. No, it was pretty much the U.S. government saying, we're taking all of this land surrounding you and this land over here. So what they did was there's this land that surrounds the reservation, which is still used by the Native Americans. It's federal land, but it's sort of, it's called cede territory or something of this nature, but it's basically, it's not the reservation, but it's still treaty land. It's still land that the Native Americans are supposed to have free access and use of to hunt, to fish, to get their fresh water from. And that's where this pipeline is going under. It's going under fresh water that was supposedly going to be there for the Native Americans to use, even though it wasn't the reservation. It wasn't where they were supposed to be building structures and the like. And they don't. But it's still a place where they can bury their dead. It's still a place where they can hunt and fish and get water and have free access to. So, and is the source of all of the fresh water for the reservation. So the idea that this isn't on reservation land is correct, but it is on treaty land. It is land that is entitled to use by the Sioux based on these treaties. So those are some little distinctions. But yeah, the people with political influence, all 30,000 of them, managed to divert the pipeline to treaty territory instead of having it go by their town.
The treaties. I didn't realize the treaties themselves. I know there's been legal lawsuits filed to stop it. I don't know if all of those loose lawsuits have been decided. If they've been decided, it's in favor of building the pipeline. The Army Corps of Engineers, I'm beginning to wonder about, because I'm beginning to wonder who's influencing them. Are these really just plain engineers and they're just looking at the pure science? Are they now just a political agency? Because, you know, that story I read where it just seemed like the decisions they're making where to put the pipeline are as much based on politics as they would be on science. And I'm mentioning that. I would like to know the last person who was in charge, I don't know what it is, the last person in charge of the Army Corps of Engineers, is he working for some oil company now? Wouldn't surprise me.
Well, yeah, like, I mean, the idea that this thing could get checked off to go under any fresh water, regardless of where it was located, is, yeah, a little dubious, right? Because we know that oil pipelines leak. One just exploded next to an airport in Kansas, or Kansas, where is it, Kansas City, Missouri, or something like that. Somewhere.
And then the Army Corps of Engineers, what I read is they're making the claim that these people should leave this area because winter is coming. You're talking about people, I kind of think these people know a little about surviving winter. So how in the world could the Army Corps of Engineers say, oh, winter is coming, you people better move, you got to freeze or something?
Yeah, so that's it's the water protectors who aren't native Sioux and aren't from the area, because we have people from all over the world, but mostly all over the United States who are there. And yeah, I mean, there were people there with summer tents, okay, who weren't really prepared for the big winter that's hit, and some left, and others have winterized. You know, there's reports of this. There's a guy who was there who apparently looked around and saw all of this about to go down with winter looming, put 30 grand on a credit card worth of building supplies, and they built these semi-permanent structures that they were, you know, mini cabins that they're insulating and getting ready. So there's been some sort of more permanent structures built. There's just people who know how to winterize, giving advice, you know, lining the insides of tents with blankets to help insulate them more, and you know, moving, dispersing some small wood burning stoves to larger tents that can accommodate them, that sort of thing. Well, you know, and there's also reports of flooding that takes place there, which it seems to me would probably be after winter more than during, you know, when you get the melt off. Although that could happen, that could, you know, snow a bunch and then have the melt. But Army Corps engineers said that they have no interest in actually removing people. Then the local sheriff there, Morton County, says that, okay, well, what we'll do instead is we're going to block the roads. We're not going to let anybody bring supplies in. And they started threatening people who were coming in that, hey, if you assist them, it's $1,000 fine that you'll have to pay. You know, people weren't intimidated, and they didn't end up holding up the roadblock. People kept going in. I have no knowledge of anybody actually getting $1,000 bill from Morton County in the mail. And if they did, I would suggest that they would not pay that. Right. So then this storm hit Tuesday, and it dumped a lot of snow on the roads. And so Morgan County goes, oh, okay, problem solved. We just won't clear the roads. We won't clear the roads, and we're going to set up blockades now saying the roads are unsafe. It's all about your safety. This is what this is for, people. It's just trying to make you safe. A couple other things that they did. They got rid of, all of a sudden, there's a no-fly zone. It became a federal no-fly zone over this the water protectors, Standing Rock, and basically the only thing that's affected by it is the drones that were flying around recording the activities of the police. right? The police can still fly their helicopters, their planes. Really, the only other aircraft that have been in the area, are the drones that have been monitoring things. It also means that local press, the press helicopter from Bismarck, which wasn't coming, but it also can't fly over, So that's a pretty scary use of governmental power to block observation of the events that are taking place. And apparently there's also reports that there's been phone jamming going on. There's something called Facebook Hill, which is one of the few places you can get phone signal. So people go up there and they update their Facebook and they upload pictures and, contact family. And then, apparently there's been doing signal jamming. So the cell phones don't work anymore. So there's some local folks that had been staying in Bismarck for a few days. The roads were blocked. They weren't being allowed through. They were bringing in firewood, and looks like they just got in today. Yeah, or made it in yesterday. They must have gone up they must have just made it the Facebook Hill. So signal is getting out, at least now, as we just got a nice Facebook message from some friends who made it there safely.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to be able to get rid of the people, or even maybe the people who are there are ready to hang out for quite a while. Mm-hmm. So I don't know how to get rid of them, short of some cavalry charge or something. I don't know how. And I don't know what the police force is in the air. They have the National Guard. Would the state actually bring in the National Guard? Because I don't know how they're going to get rid of these.
There was. Well, they don't really need to. There's also DAPL, the Dakota Access Pipeline guards who are there. Their own hired private security has been there. There's all sorts of footage of people heavily, armed like Kevlar with the helmet and the suit and everything, who aren't wearing badging of any kind. And they think those are likely the oil company private security, probably from whatever's left of the Blackwater folk, right? Like that's probably who's there. And there's even, there's one scene where they're moving the crowd back, and there's a car that's clearly marked medic, and it's, sort of trying to keep up, but it can't run people over, so it's kind of trying to move and get out of the way along with everybody else. And one of these unbadged, unmarked security types, who does seem like he's wearing more sophisticated military stuff, even than the militarized sheriffs are, points to the woman driving the car and says, pull her out, arrest her. Right. And so the sheriff follows the command of this unbadged, order giver, pulls the woman out of the car. Car is still running. Car is still rolling. And it's like going to roll into the crowd. Another one of the water protectors jumps in, gets the car stopped before also getting pulled out. But it's a really curious mix. Now there's sheriff departments from all over the region, all over the state, from other states that have been called in to do the security. And one by one, they're sort of getting peeled back by their localities after somebody finds out they're there, or being, there was a sheriff who had, I think he was also somewhere further north in North Dakota, but sent a bunch of his sheriffs deputies to go participate, and his phone was blowing up emails from his local constituents saying, "We will not vote for you." And every vote there is like, 0.5% of the voting population. So you really got to watch it when you're a local sheriff in a rural area. So he turned them around. He called them up, said, "You know what? Come back. We're not going." They were already deployed. They were on their way. He called them en route and had them come home. So there's also, the Morton County sheriffs are working extra overtime. But, you look at some of this footage, and it looks like a bunch of adolescent kids dressed up like army men playing John Wayne movies. They're shooting rubber bullets at people. You know, it's absolutely been unnecessary levels of force at these peaceful folks. And the other thing is, where they're, I don't really, maybe I still don't quite get the logistics of this thing, but where the folks are camped and protesting is not in the way of the construction. The construction pad where they're going to start to do, when they're going to do the drilling underneath the lake, is about a mile or two from where the protests are taking place currently. So, and it's supposedly, well, the government asked them politely if they could cease from doing anything further while this was looked at, is currently under review again by the Army Corps of Engineers. Apparently they're just going like, oh, thanks for the suggestion. You know, if something bad happens, that's great, but we're just going to keep drilling. Trump will be your president in a month, and he'll okay it. So we're just going to keep going forward. So they have a drilling pad already that they're continuing to ignore the government direction or suggestion, and they're drilling away as we speak. So it's not like they need the protesters to move to do the work. But if, of course, you know, the protest, they feel like they want to get the protesters out of there so they can reduce the amount of security that they're paying for, because they're afraid, of course, that if the security is removed and the protesters are still there, they'll march on the drill site, which is probably a valid argument.
Yeah, here's the map. Oops, I gotta perhaps unmute. The button pushing is not working out too well. Okay, I have. Let me try that again. I wasn't sure if I had muted myself. Okay, there's the map. Now there is the pipeline, and that little red area, is that where the demonstration is? If you can read this.
No. Can you
it's not.
Is there possible zoom on that?
So, let's see. Yeah. It says archaeological sites. I don't think this map is really going to be reservation. No, it doesn't show it. Okay.
So you can see the reservation in gray towards the bottom.
Yeah, that's the bottom area.
Standing Rock Sioux Reservation.
And I thought this line was the map, was the pipeline. Oh, they got the little tent-looking things.
Yeah, there you go. And that's about a mile or so away from that. I don't know what that red highlighted section is, but it looks probably about where the final bit of, or about where the drilling pad would be, I would suspect. Yeah, the pipeline's going through archaeological sites, burial grounds, all sorts of things. You know, again, this is treaty land. It's not reservation land, but it is treaty land that the Native Americans have had free access to and use of, and hasn't been turned over to private ownership and you know, construction or development or anything, because it's theirs to use. You know, they've agreed not to construct on it, but it's still treaty land, right? You've
set up a fund that, and I'll put a link in the show notes, where if you get enough money, you might actually be able to travel there, and if you don't, the money will still be used, I guess.
Well, if it's either not enough money to, you know, buy tents and supplies and get myself out there, and if I got out there too, you know, if it's the tent's gonna be good for 6 people, other people can come too. If it doesn't get up to the $2,500 that would take to get all the Dakota winter gear, like a big tent and a stove and winter gear and shoes and enough food, firewood, and toilet paper to not have to rely on the camp for 3 weeks or a month or whatever it is, then yeah, whatever money was raised is just going to get donated to the Red Rock Sioux. Additionally, if for whatever reason this thing isn't going on in January. If tomorrow the Army Corps of Engineers says, "Oh, you know what? We found an even better route against some place where there's, nobody to complain," then yeah, also the money would just be donated to this. They're going to have a hell of a cleanup operation. They have 5,000 people on treaty land that have been making a mess. They got a lot of rubber bullets to pick up. The sheriffs aren't going to be walking around out there picking up rubber bullets. They're not going to be picking up empty mace cans. But the Sioux will. And so, it'll perhaps fund that operation.
Yeah, the people who are there protesting, they're going to hold out. Mm-hmm. I don't see any way they won't hold out. So it comes down to whether or not somebody decides to move them out with, I don't know, bulldozers or whatever. And it's going
to be tough.
I don't know about that.
There's 1,000 veterans. There's 1,000 veterans that are headed there right now. They're going to be there from, I think, the 4th through the 7th, I think, is when they're planning on being there. And they're planning on doing the human, being the human barrier between the current protesters and the water protectors. It's going to take a while. I'll figure it out. Between the water protectors who are currently there and the police. And these apparently are, multi-generational, multi-wars, veterans of all stripes. Some of them disabled and the rest. And they're going to go and just, set themselves right between the police. And basically they said to give the water protectors a break. Let them take a week off, right? Let them just go rest, recoup. There'll be somebody on the front line watching. And a lot of those folks, of course, are going to have to go back to their lives. But from what I hear, there's more and more of them who said they were ready to stay, that they would not be leaving, that they're gonna trench in with water protesters and stay. So, it's one thing you have the bad optics of Native Americans getting shot with rubber bullets and maced. I think a little less so for the millennials. Mm-hmm. who are getting beat. We're kind of getting used to seeing millennials, between the G8 and the Occupy movement. We're used to seeing, millennials get pepper sprayed. That's not even news. But to see something, that looks like a modern day scene out of the Trail of Tears, or to see police in militarized gear facing off against veterans who served this.
Oh, that's not going to happen.
No, and an interesting thing too is why won't that happen? Right?
No, politics.
Well, but what's the difference between the politics of police versus peaceful citizens and politics between police and veterans? It's an optics. It's already bad.
Oh,
it's already bad that in the middle of the night they're spraying beat down people with water hoses and sub-zero temperatures.
There are a lot more people voting public who support veterans than support Native, the Native Americans. A lot more than
no, I get it. Yeah, it's going to be terrific optics. But my point is, you're right. I bet we won't have those same optics there. We won't have that same. I bet there's going to be like, hey, I hear they're leaving on the 5th. Let's just, stand back. So is that an opportunity to press? Will the veterans press the protest? Will they go and take down the barbed wire that has been erected around the camp? I can't imagine if a decorated war veteran in a wheelchair is wheeled up to that barbed wire fence that was constructed and starts cutting away at it, that he's going to get maced and rubber bulleted and water hosed. And if that does happen, if we start to see something like this, man, that's a game changer.
Oh,
that is
absolutely.
A big time game changer. That's one of those things, the fact that they'd water cannon an elderly woman, rubber bulleted child. So what? They're not in uniform. As soon as both sides are wearing government uniforms, it's gonna be a different sort of world we're walking into, right?
Yeah, I can't think of a good way out is they simply outlast, and the people working overtime on the pipeline figuring out some alternative route. I think that's probably the best possible answer. Is somebody comes up with a different route, cost a bunch of money. Well, okay. All right, we got a businessman, Donald Trump, going to be president. I'm sure he's willing to throw a couple of bucks that way or something, and they build around it. I got to believe that's the best possible. I don't see any other good solution other than building around it.
Trump is an investor in this company.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, and
it'll be a business decision.
The owner of the pipeline donated a lot of money to the campaign on top of this, right? And was asked point blank, hey, Donald Trump is invested in the company. You donated a lot of money to Donald Trump's campaign. Do you think once he's president, he'll just say, go ahead with it? And he was like, oh, yeah. Yeah, that's how this works. He gave me money, so he's invested. I gave him money, so I'm invested. And so, yeah, whatever I say, and it's in his best interest anyway, it's just going to happen, day one. That's also why I want to go in January. Partly I would go today, except I can't. There's no way I can leave any of my life behind right now. But I could free up some time in January to go. And I think January might be the more interesting thing. I think if we still have this stalemate of Obama is president and not, not totally, people are unhappy with the fact that he's not been doing more. Not exactly clear what more he could be doing. You can't just, order your military to intervene in local police business or state business. It's a tricky thing, right? It's a tricky situation. He can't just order a department of government saying like, hey, I decided I don't like where you're putting this pipeline, put it somewhere else. Because then you're like, well, the next president could just do that with any branch of government, engineers or scientists or anything like that. There's not that won't happen anyway, but Democrats are afraid to do it because they know it's wrong. But if he could keep having the Army Corps of Engineers relook at this until they can find a better solution, at least that would give the time. But then say it's still stalemated. Say the Army Corps of Engineers doesn't find an alternative. Say the company files other paper in whatever court that makes it so things take longer to happen. I think there's a court of there's somewhere in Washington. There's a delay court that you can just get. I'd like to put in this piece of paper that says we delay this until a further date. Okay. All right. So then you get Trump. What does Trump say? Trump then orders the National Guard, the Army, the Navy, the Marines, everybody to converge upon this, and yeah. So that's the day I'd like to be there. That's the day. January 20th, that week after. I think that's going to be the really interesting time if there isn't a resolution found before then.
That's really the biggest single question: is what is the Republican Congress? They're not going to do everything that Trump wants them to do. I do not believe that. They're not stupid people. They're going to go along with they'll go along with reducing business taxes. Absolutely. They'll definitely go along with reducing taxes, quote unquote, for everybody, but mostly for people making over $250,000 a year. The business part of it, they'll buy into. But they might even say, okay, yeah, we want to do something about, getting illegal immigrants out. But there's too many illegal immigrants in the United States. There's you can only make a teeny tiny dent no matter what they do. So that's maybe an issue you can talk about and you can't really do anything about because it's not going to work whatever the heck you do. So
well, that and there's also like so many big industries that rely on the labor. Actually, first of all, and it's not a growing number. There hasn't been over, I think it's 4 years now. There's as many people coming in as going out, basically. So it's not really increasing right And, California farming, we are the breadbasket of America, right? We run that industry almost entirely on the backs of immigrant labor. And there aren't robots in the wings who are going to work the fields for the farmers. There aren't, masses of Oklahomans trying to make it to California so they can work the tomato fields, right? Like, that's not where we're at. That's not going to happen. And hey, you know what? Maybe you could convince millennials to go out there and work in the farms, but they're going to want 15, 20 bucks an hour.
Oh, yeah.
So then, you know what? You can still have your tomatoes in North Dakota, but now they're $5 each. How do you like that?
And
Right?
I think
There you
even
go.
when it comes to science funding, except like climate science stuff, governments, the Republican administration and Congress, they're not going to buy that. But but the rest of it from DARPA's still going to get unlimited buckets of money. And a lot of research comes through DARPA.
Yeah.
The space program, I think the space program will see support from the Republican Congress.
I'm kind of interested. I think we're going to see a very Orwellian presidency, actually. I think you may have things like global warming be a word that has to be stricken out of all government. It's a hoax. Remove it from any mention of any government documents. This isn't something that's gonna, it could be kind of scary that way. I mean, it's gonna be scary anyway. This is gonna be an interesting 4 years. But what would almost be like, can you imagine though? If Trump day one goes, this North Dakota pipeline thing, it's not good for Indians. It's a terrible deal, bad deal, raw deal. We're gonna move it. Right? Like I mean, it's as much as I don't believe that would possibly happen. How funny would it be, in a sense, for him to disarm the left so heavily and just be like, "Oh gosh, I hate that I agree with this thing," and then we've all bought into that. Would actually be the brilliant move. That's the first thing he should do, because here's the brilliant move: you make him order. Then he goes, "I'm going to order the Army Corps of Engineers to find another route. We're going to order this company to find another route," and just through pure strength, right? Strength of one decider saying, "I'll fix everything." The left can't help but love it, right? Can't help but love that, right? So now you've given somebody who's already shown that we're going to be in for a bit of fascism a little step back for his first sort of fascist type decision too, right? That first show of strength. And then the next one we don't agree with, but maybe the one after that, or maybe it'll be the one after that he does, that he unilaterally decides something. So that's scary all the way down.
Yeah, but as far as the government surveillance and things, that's been going on, and that's been increasing for years. Even the Obama administration didn't do anything to cut that back. That's got nothing to do with administration.
And they're doing it at Standing Rock, by the way. They've got face recognition technology that they're using up there. That was actually, I didn't know what, I thought there was just observation going on, because you can see it's this big giant thing that looks like, you ever go driving and they've got one of those temporary radar guns out there that as you drive by, it tells you how fast you're going. And it's not a permanent one, but I mean, one of those, it's like a big box. It's sitting on it's mounted on a trailer kind of a thing. Well, they had one of those, and there was this sort of scope coming out of it. And the only reason I'd seen it is the drone pilot, who's a Sioux drone pilot, was flying around, checking it out, and kind of like looking at it. And I guess one of the military vets who's coming recognized it as something that they used in the field, and it's a face recognition technology when you're trying to identify certain individuals or filtering a crowd to see if you get a hit for somebody. So they're treating this like they've come across the terrorist camp, and all these guys, are getting to play soldier in Morton County against unarmed people. who are also citizens of this country, which they don't seem to understand.
We're getting a little tinfoil hat. This is an article. This is on the Christian Science Monitor about the FCC needing to stop wireless cell phone spying. Ever heard of stingrays? Stingrays. It says police departments growing use of devices known as stingrays that
So
can intercept and disrupt people's communications, representing a clear danger, etc.
Right. What they are is they're fake towers.
Yep, fake cell towers to hijack phone calls, text messages, and data streams.
Yeah. And they've been using them pretty much carte blanche or carte blanche.
Yeah.
I don't know how to say that. They've been getting more and more, minor requests to go after a local drug dealer, this, that, the other. There have been a few cases where officers were caught utilizing this technology on a girlfriend or a wife who they were having problems with. Right? Oh, boy.
Oh yeah, I can imagine those guys at the Department of Homeland Security and everything. I gotta imagine there's a fair amount of, a couple of those young guys are maybe looking at some. Let's move that drone over, and let's take a look at that topless speech over here.
Well, there's that, but it's like there was a
and investigating the ex-girlfriend and all that sort of baloney.
Well, police do this more than people think. They do these searching these databases and looking into this stuff for their own private use. There was a police officer. I think this is in Florida. No, it probably is Florida. But this female police officer pulled over a police officer from a different jurisdiction for speeding. Wrote them a ticket. You're not responding to a call. You don't have your lights. You're going, 90 miles an hour in a 45. No, I'm writing you a ticket. And she did. Right? And all of a sudden started getting all this hate mail and all these threats and all this sort of stuff. And she was savvy enough to I guess, go into her database, the database where they search things. You have a password to get in them. And I guess it reflects who's used that password to look up a different individual. And so she looked herself up to see who'd been looking, and she found hits from officers all across the state who had used it to look up, because their, addresses, if you're a police officer, is secret. You can't find it in the DMV record. It's not connected to the registration of your vehicle. And she actually could see all these different officers who, in the last, 48 hours after this thing had hit, had been looking her up. Right. So it's just they're like people, only they're like the people you were with in high school. They haven't, they're not necessarily, adults in the world that we inhabit. They're not all. I guess that's true of anybody, but there's people like that everywhere.
That actually concerns me more, and I don't think Hillary Clinton would have done anything more than Trump on that area.
But yeah, the idea that
concerns me more than Trump himself. This sort of government surveillance.
But the idea that adults are in control is the misnomer, right? Like that's the point. It's like the idea that just people with good judgment have access to these things is absolutely bullshit. Yeah, that's what we want to have happen. That's why these things are created, and that's how they're supposed to be used. But that's not the society we live in. And yeah, you can look no further than who we just fucking elected president to say, yeah, the fucking adults are not in charge of this country anymore. This is now a country run by adolescent morons.
The big safeguard has been the Supreme Court. To a lot of things that Congress has done, the bottom line protection has been the Supreme Court. And we've had Republicans lining up with, conservatives lining up with Democrats on some issues. I have no idea what kind, who the heck Trump's going to come up with. And that would be, if the Republican Congress goes along with whoever Trump picks, now you're starting to erode
and they will.
Biggest safeguard for our individual freedoms, the Supreme Court.
Yeah. Yeah, although from what I understand of the Supreme Court, regardless of the wingnut that you get in there, and this is only true to an extent, it's harder to undo progress. It's harder to add layers of restriction towards people or individuals once they're not there anymore. It's harder to create a rule that discriminates than it is nowadays to remove one, I think. And I think in the Supreme Court, there's a lot of stuff that I don't see coming. That's going to be coming. That's going to be, terrible.
Yeah, if he only picks one Supreme Court justice, and the Republican Congress goes along with it, okay, that's one thing. But if he gets to pick 2 or 3, if he was around for 4 years, he might get to be able to pick 2 or 3. Again, if the Republican Congress goes along with him.
Yeah, and if it's a Republican Congress in 2 years. Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah, local Democrats have just got the best fundraiser they've had in a really long time.
Yeah, but there's only 8 Republican seats up in 2018?
Is that it?
No, only 8 or 9. So what is the majority now? Is it 51 to 49?
No, it's bigger than that. But
okay,
I don't know. 8 might do it, but it depends over there. I don't know. But my point though is I don't think you're going to be repealing gay rights or gay marriage. I don't think you're going to see a lot of repealing of rights.
Oh, Trump is in favor of that.
Yeah, but he can be in favor all day long, even with the conservative judges getting even the conservative judges who are on there to go, we're going to take back we're going to remove those rights from people now that have them now. That's something that I don't foresee as being possible. Even if the Supreme Court did it or tried to do it, I think you would definitely see a backlash. And California might just literally build a wall. But I don't think you would. I think it's very difficult. As difficult it is to get people rights through our legal system who didn't have them initially, even though the Constitution kind of spells that stuff out. Taking them away after they've been given, I don't think that the law is really designed to take those cases, because at that point, as dumb as it is, right? As stupid as it is to have a ban on gay marriage. Is to have no voting rights for segments of our society. As ridiculous as those were, they were and had precedent until they were removed. Now you would have to argue against the Constitution, which spelled out things that weren't being protected all along, that even though the Constitution explicitly says people have these rights, that now we're going to take them away. You're arguing against the Constitution at that point in a way that even some of our right-leaning or right-entrenched current Supreme Court justices would have a really hard, except for Clarence Thomas. He'll do just about anything. He's ridiculous.
Is he the one who has never said anything when any case has ever come up? He's never said anything up until.
Yeah, he never says anything. And then what was it he was talking about? And then all of a sudden, I don't think the gay thing. It's always the gay thing.
All right, well, I got a couple of quick science stories. I want to jump into some science, and we can talk about politics all night long.
Okay. I'm going to pause while you do that. I'll be right back while you do that.
Okay. I'm going to talk about life without oxygen.
Wait, Ed. Yeah. Never mind. Is this the 2.5 billion year old microbes?
That's the one.
Right. I heard it though, so I'll be back after.
Okay. Okay. Gonna do the. Oops. Did I make sure? Got to make sure I I unmuted my mic. I did. I unmuted my mic. Now I can do the screen share thing again. There we go. There's that little sucker, that little ancient rock. And this is a rock. Well, a couple of little rocks. Somewhere between Earth's creation and where we are today, scientists have demonstrated that some early life forms existed just fine without any oxygen. And the thing is, we're talking also about when we look for life, Earth-like life on exoplanets. When we ask that question, is there life outside of Earth, Earth-like life on other planets, asteroids, etc.? We always think in terms of obviously water, but we also think in terms of oxygen. Well, here's a little critter that gets along fine without oxygen. Let's see this. 2.52 billion year old sulfur oxidizing bacteria, exceptionally large, spherical shape, smooth walled microscopic structure, much larger than most modern bacteria, but similar to some modern single cell organisms. They live in deep water, sulfur rich ocean settings today, and they live where even there is almost no trace of oxygen. This is research from the University of Cincinnati. For these life forms remain sparse, including how they survived at a time when oxygen levels in the atmosphere were less than 1,000th of 1% of what they are today. 1,000th of 1%. And the bacteria, they found fossilized bacteria, 2 separate locations, North Cape province of South Africa. The oldest reported fossil sulfur bacteria today. And this discovery is helping us to reveal the diversity of life and ecosystems that existed just prior to something called the Great Oxidation Event, a time of major atmospheric evolution. The 2.52 billion year old sulfur oxidizing bacteria are exceptionally large, which I've already said. Samples of bacteria that were abundant in deep water areas of the ocean in a geologic time known as the Nearctian Eon, or something like that, 2.8 to 2.5 billion years ago. Oldest known organisms, they live in a very dark, deep water environment. Bacteria existed 2 billion years before plants and trees evolved about 450 million years ago. We discovered, this is the researcher by the name of Andrew Saji, C-Z-A-G-A. He discovered these microfossils preserved in a layer of hardcore silica-rich rock in something called the Kappa Valley Craton, C-R-A-T-O-N, of South Africa. An atmosphere of less than 1% oxygen. Scientists have presumed that there were things living in deep water in mud that wouldn't have much sunlight or oxygen. But the researcher says experts didn't have any direct evidence of them until now. And based on radiometric dating and geochemical isotope analysis, Caesar characterized his fossils as having formed in this early something called the, I never even heard of it, the Valbrea, V-A-A-L-B-R-A supercontinent, an ancient deep seabed containing sulfur from continental rock. According to this dating, fossils bacteria were also thriving just before the era when other shallow water bacteria began creating more and more oxygen as a byproduct of photosynthesis. He contends that these early bacteria were busy ingesting volcanic hydrogen sulfide, the molecule known to give off that rotten egg smell, then emitting sulfate, a gas that has no smell. He says this is the same process that goes on today as modern bacteria recycle decaying organic matter into minerals and gas. The waste product from one bacteria was food for the other. There you go. Life without oxygen. And we have no idea how many bazillion kinds of life forms we're going to still find on the Earth itself. And we have to continually redefine what we think of may be necessary for Earth-like life. And as we can see now, one of the things that may not be needed is oxygen. So you still have, and this bacteria, 2.8 billion years ago, that evolved and used sulfite, used this sulfite recycling in order to survive. Now, that's a neat little study. Got another neat little study, and this one is about a virus-inspired medication system, really kind of genius. And let me do the screen share. Justin is back in time, so he can hear about this virus-inspired delivery system. And there's a picture of it. And what we got? Scientists have developed blueprints that instruct human cells to assemble a virus-like delivery system that can transport custom cargo from one cell to another. And that sentence alone is freaking genius.
Yeah.
We're shifting our perception from viruses as pathogens to viruses as inspiration for new tools, new healthcare tools. Wesley Sandquist, PhD at the Department of Biochemistry, University of Utah School of Medicine. That's amazing. The carefully designed, this is designed instructions, set forth a series of, it says, self-propelled events that mimic how some viruses transfer their infectious contents from one cell to another. From the blueprints, blueprints tumbled out self-assembling soccer ball-shaped nano cages. So you're printing these nano cages, and blueprints are like an algorithm. So they're producing something called nano cages, adding on specific pieces of genetic code from viruses caused the nano cages to be packaged within cell membranes. So now you put these little nano cages, you take genetic code from viruses, and now you're able to put them into cell membranes and then export from cells. So you've got this little transportation system, nano cages going into cell membranes and then exporting material out from the cells. The tiny capsules undock from one cell, travel to another, docking there, emptying its content upon arrival. In this case, the protective nano cages carried cargo that the scientists used like homing beacons to track the vessel's journeys. The next step are to design nano cages that hold drugs and other small molecules that would be assembled factory style in one set of cells and sent to another. Such biologically inspired delivery systems are expected to be better tolerated by the body than other nanoparticles made from synthetic materials. Here's a proof of concept. But wow, that's freaking awesome. Amazing.
Yeah.
And I think, boy, that's the big leap in healthcare. And we are, in fact, mimicking nature. We are using our gut bacteria We want to improve the health of our gut bacteria. We're using mechanisms in our body, such as our immune system, to better deal with things like cancer tumors. And now we're taking something like a virus. That's what a virus does. A virus hijacks the body, the stem cells reproduction mechanism, and it gets, what the new stem cell, the new cell that gets produced, it now has the virus genetic code, and that's exactly what they're replicating here.
Yeah, humans are amazing hackers, aren't they? And it's more crude version, but there's this. I think I might have talked about it on the show. Maybe it was on TWIS before, but I met this guy. He's a doctor. He's a heart doctor. He does heart surgery, right? And we were talking. It turns out he didn't start in medicine. He started as a mechanical engineer, and took a sort of cross course in some medical stuff back in school, just to sort of, have a more rounded education in biology and what have you. And he became fascinated with the fact that everything he'd learned in fluid dynamics could be applied to the heart. Like, it works the same. It's a pump. It works the same way. The way that blood moves through the heart is the same way that fluids move through a pump. Like, all the math that he'd learned as a mechanical engineer applied exactly to this, and ended up pursuing it and becoming a heart surgeon instead of a mechanical engineer. But as we delve into these systems, we're not only mimicking nature, but we're also finding that nature is much more accessible to us nowadays than it may have ever been. Fascinating stuff. And the drug delivery things, the ability to target drugs to specific cells or region of cells or areas of the body. It's just, this is what evolves medicine beyond poisoning the whole body to kill one pathogen or one cancerous tumor that you're looking to get rid of. Looks like Ed has dropped out of the call. He'll probably be finding a way to make it back. And I don't have a rundown of the stories, so I'm just going to go back and see if I can pull up any kind of recent news here. So I guess the whole thing on Standing Rock with the blocked roads, the uncleared roads, and the cell jamming, well, it may have been going on. They must have stopped doing it or not be doing it around the clock now, because these local folks just made it, and they're there. There's at Standing Rock. They're at the protest with the water protectors. So fantastic. Oh, okay. So, this is sort of one of these interesting things too. Standing Rock didn't make it really onto my radar until about a week before Thanksgiving. I think that's about right. But it's been going on for months and months and months there now. It didn't just spring up. They've been started with just a few hundred people, and now it's grown. I think the numbers are somewhere in the 5,000-6,000. It started to wean a little bit with the cold temperatures, but now more people are pouring in. And the veterans, it looks like, have arrived. It says here, according to Reuters, U.S. veterans arrive at pipeline protest camp in North Dakota. Hey, and you know what? Maybe that's why the roads are open again. Yeah, that's probably it. I bet there's a very direct correlation with the arrival of 1,000 veterans and the opening of the roads, because they were going to be able to turn those people back. Right? This is This is again off of Reuters. U.S. military veterans were arriving on Thursday at a camp to join thousands of activists braving snow and freezing temperatures to protest pipeline project near Native American reservation in North Dakota. It's near the reservation, but again, it's on treaty land. However, other veterans in the state took exception to the efforts of the group organizing veterans to act as human shields for the protesters, saying the nature of the protest reflected poorly on the participants. Well, you can't expect everybody to agree on everything, can you now? Water protectors have spent months rallying against the plans to route a $3.8 billion Dakota Access Pipeline beneath a lake near, again, they keep saying near Standing Rock Sioux Reservation. It is near the reservation. It is on treaty land. Saying it poses a threat to water resources and sacred Native American sites, which of course are located on the treaty land. State officials on Monday ordered activists to vacate Oseti Saquin camp located on U.S. Army Corps of Engineers land near Cannonball, North Dakota, citing harsh weather conditions, officials said on Wednesday. However, they will not actively enforce that order. Matthew Crane, 32-year-old Navy veteran who arrived 3 days ago, said the veterans joining the water protectors were standing on the shoulders of Martin Luther King Jr. and Gandhi with their plans to shield protesters. I bought a one-way ticket, he told Reuters, as he worked to build a wooden shelter at the main camp. Hopefully we can shut this down before Christmas. U.S. President-elect Trump said on Thursday for the first time that he supports completion of the pipeline. Oh, that must say I missed that. Trump's transition team also said Trump supported peaceful protests. Well, okay, so there's a lot of talk. And, you know, completion of the pipeline, you don't have to be against completion of the pipeline to be for rerouting it. So I suppose there could be hope. Yeah. This is a quote from Trump's transition team daily note, which is sent to campaign supporters and congressional staff. We respect all Americans' First Amendment rights to peacefully protest, and we hope that local and federal officials continue to give support to local law enforcement so they are able to continue to protect these protesters. Oh, apparently have not seen the video.